The father's justice. I'm just going to the reunion alone. Don't control me like that. Emma said it from across the kitchen, the overhead light casting a pale reflection on the counter between us. I was holding a glass of water, halfway to my lips, when her phone lit up on the table. Can't wait to see you tonight. I miss you. Luke. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't ask who he was. I just stood there, watching the screen go dark again, long enough to understand something had already shifted. We've been married 12 years. We have 2 kids. She's the woman I built my entire life around. The room didn't change. The house was the same. But something inside it had cracked. When the person you trust most starts hiding things, everything still looks normal. But it isn't. I set the glass down slowly, the sound barely louder than my own breathing. Had I missed something? Or had I never really seen her at all? Emma and I didn't start like this. We met in a crowded lecture hall, kept finding each other in small places, and somehow built a life from those moments. We got married not long after, a quiet ceremony, nothing extravagant, just enough to feel real. Then came Alex, then Sophie, and the house slowly filled with noise, routines, and responsibilities that made everything feel steady. For a long time, that was enough. But things don't break all at once. They shift, layer by layer. Work hours stretched longer, bills stacked on the kitchen counter, school schedules filled every space on the calendar. Nights changed first. We stopped talking without deciding to. The television stayed on longer, conversations got shorter, and eventually disappeared. The couch became a place to sit, not connect. I can't say exactly when the distance began, only that it grew quietly. The space between us widened in small, unnoticeable ways. She stopped reaching for my hand. I stopped expecting her to. We moved through the same rooms, but not toward each other. I told myself this was normal. What long marriages become after years of responsibility. I didn't question it. I didn't push. But Emma changed more than I admitted. She spoke less, avoided my eyes, and turned away sooner. And somehow, I kept believing nothing important could ever really fall apart. The email came through on a quiet afternoon. Just another notification at first, but Emma paused longer than usual when she read it. A high school reunion. That was all it said. Yet something in her shifted almost immediately. Over the next few days, I noticed small changes. She stood in front of the mirror longer, turning slightly, as if seeing herself from a different time. Dresses she hadn't touched in years were pulled out, laid across the bed, then changed again. The bathroom light stayed on later at night. Her phone changed, too. It was always face down now, the screen lighting up briefly before her hand covered it. One evening I said, "I want to go with you." I kept my voice steady, casual. She didn't hesitate. "You're busy. I'll just go on my own." She smiled when she said it, but it didn't reach her eyes. It wasn't jealousy that settled in. It was something quieter, like standing outside a closed door in your own house. I began noticing details I would have ignored before. The timing of her replies, the way her lips curved slightly when she read certain messages, how quickly she locked the screen. None of it was proof, but it was enough to make me wonder what exactly I was no longer part of. It happened in a moment that didn't feel important, until it did. Her phone buzzed on the counter while she stepped into the other room, and for a second, I saw the name before the screen dimmed. Luke Bennett. The message was short. "This time, I won't lose you again." I stood there, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence, reading it once, then again. I knew that name. She had mentioned him years ago. A story from before we met. Something that was supposed to stay in the past. I didn't call her back. I didn't hold up the phone and ask questions. Because I already knew how that would go. Explanations, half-truths, maybe a smile to smooth it over. Words are easy when you have time to prepare them. So, I did something else. I started paying attention. Not in a dramatic way, just quietly. I checked patterns. Her card statements showed small charges in places she never used to go. Emails stayed open a second too long before being closed. She began saying she had to stay late at school, more often than before, always with a reason that sounded reasonable on its own. Individually, none of it meant much. Together, It started forming something I couldn't ignore. That's when I understood something simple. The truth doesn't live in what people say. It shows up in what they repeat. And I was only just beginning to see the pattern. "Have fun. I'll stay with the kids," I said from the doorway as she zipped her bag, the morning light cutting across the hallway floor. She smiled, quick and relieved, then turned away. I didn't stop her. I didn't warn her. I didn't ask another question. I just watched her leave. Inside, the decision was already made. I wouldn't chase explanations. I would observe. If she stayed within the lines, then I would look at myself, fix what I had ignored. But if she crossed them, I wouldn't be the man left reacting after the fact. I wouldn't lose control of what mattered. That afternoon, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, the same place we used to plan vacations. I reviewed our joint accounts, noted balances, downloaded statements, small steps that didn't look like much on their own. I pulled copies of documents from the drawer, stacked them neatly, and saved what needed saving. Nothing dramatic, just preparation. The house stayed quiet around me, the kind of quiet that lets you hear every small movement. I realized I wasn't waiting anymore. I was setting the ground for whatever came next. And once you stop waiting, you start seeing things differently. Emma arrived at the reunion, but it didn't end there. I watched the location update on my phone, the small blue dot moving from the restaurant to a bar a few streets away. The place was dim, neon lights spilling onto the sidewalk, music pulsing faintly even through the screen. She stayed there for a while. Then the dot shifted again. Not alone. They left together. I didn't need to see them to know. The path traced itself clearly, from the bar to the old park near her school, a place she had mentioned before in passing stories. They didn't stay long. The dot moved again, slower this time, stopping in front of a hotel I recognized from the map. I didn't drive there. I didn't call her. I stayed where I was, at the kitchen table, the light above me buzzing softly. Instead, I documented everything. Check-in time matched the moment her location stopped. The hotel's public hallway camera, accessible through a service contact I knew, confirmed the entry. Later, the transaction appeared. A charge that didn't belong to any story she had told me. Each piece on its own was small. Together, they left no space for doubt. The next morning, she walked through the door just after sunrise, keys set down quietly on the counter. I heard Sophie laugh from the living room as Emma stepped in, her voice warm, steady, like nothing had happened. She bent down, wrapped her arms around the kids, smiling the same way she always did. That was the moment it hit hardest. Not what she had done, but how easily she moved between two versions of her life. And standing there, watching it unfold, I realized I didn't know which one was real. After that night, Emma changed in ways that would have looked hopeful to anyone else. She started cooking again, standing at the stove with the soft glow of the kitchen light on her face, asking what I wanted for dinner like she used to. She checked in on me more, small questions, light touches on my arm, moments that felt almost practiced. Some nights, she leaned closer on the couch, trying to close a distance she hadn't acknowledged before. From the outside, it would have looked like she was trying to fix things, like she was saving what we had, but I understood it differently. Guilt has its own rhythm, its own way of moving through a person. I didn't confront her. I kept everything the same. I woke up early, made breakfast, drove Alex and Sophie to school, and sat at the dinner table each night as if nothing had shifted. My voice stayed even. My routine stayed intact. But underneath that, I moved carefully. I separated accounts quietly, adjusted access, and reviewed the funds set aside for the kids. Documents were organized, copies secured, and everything placed where it needed to be. I wasn't ready to break the family in a single moment. I was making sure that when it did break, the children wouldn't feel the impact the same way. And the more she tried to pull closer, the more I saw how far things had already gone. Luke didn't disappear after that night. If anything, he pushed further. Messages came more often, longer this time. Not just reminders of the past, but plans for something ahead. I saw enough to understand he wasn't waiting quietly. He wanted her to choose. Emma tried to pull back, at least on the surface. She deleted messages faster, kept her phone closer, and answered with shorter replies. But it wasn't clean, not the kind of ending that closes a door. One evening, she stood by the hallway mirror, adjusting her coat, and said she had to meet a colleague about a late project. Her tone was steady, almost rehearsed. I nodded, watching her reflection instead of her face. I already knew where she was going. I didn't ask which colleague. I didn't check the time. I didn't follow. There was no need anymore. The evidence I had wasn't based on one moment. It was a pattern, repeated enough times to remove any doubt. I stayed at the table after she left, the house settling into its usual quiet. My phone sat in front of me, not for tracking, but for something else entirely. I made the call that night. The lawyer answered on the second ring. I spoke calmly, laid out what I had, what I needed to protect, and what steps came next. Documents would be drafted, timelines set, and options prepared. For the first time, I wasn't looking for answers. I was outlining an ending. And once you start preparing for an ending, you realize there's no going back to what you thought you had. I asked Emma to come home early that evening, making sure the house was quiet. The kids were already at my mother's, their backpacks gone from the hallway. When she walked in, she noticed it immediately, the stillness, the way the lights were already on in the kitchen. I was sitting at the table, everything laid out in front of me, not scattered, arranged. She didn't speak at first. Her eyes moved from the papers to my face, then back again. I watched her take in each piece. The printed messages, the hotel receipt with the timestamp, the location history marked in a clean line across the page. Nothing exaggerated, nothing hidden, just facts. Daniel, she started, her voice tightening. I can explain. I shook my head slightly. You don't need to explain what's already written down. She stepped closer, her hands trembling now. I'm sorry. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. I let the silence sit for a moment before answering. Mistakes don't take planning, I said quietly. They don't involve choosing a place, a time, a person, and then doing it again. The words didn't rise. They stayed level, controlled. That seemed to break her more than anything else. I reached for the folder beside me and slid it across the table. Inside were the documents already prepared. Separation papers, a structured division of assets, clear provisions for Alex and Sophie, everything outlined, nothing left vague. She stared at them, then back at me, as if waiting for anger, for something louder, something she could respond to. But I wasn't there for that. I wasn't there to argue or to punish. I'm not doing this to hurt you, I said, keeping my hands still on the table. I'm doing this because I won't lose control of what matters. The room stayed quiet, the kind of quiet that settles after something irreversible has been said. And as she stood there, looking at the truth laid out in front of her, I realized this wasn't the end of a conversation. It was the beginning of everything that would follow. Emma didn't argue after that night, not in the way I expected. The control she once had over the story slipped quietly, replaced by short replies and long silences. Luke didn't stay either. Once everything became real documents, consequences, decisions, whatever they thought they had faded out, his messages stopped. His name disappeared from her screen. The house felt different in the weeks that followed, not louder, not emptier, just clearer. I focused on what remained. Alex's backpack is by the door. Sophie's drawings are still taped to the fridge. The routine of mornings, the quiet of dinners. I kept those steady. That was what mattered. Love, I realized, needs emotion. But marriage depends on something else entirely. Responsibility, honesty, the willingness to stay consistent even when no one is watching. Trust doesn't collapse in a single moment. It erodes in the space where truth is replaced by silence. If you've been through something like this, you already know how quiet it can be, how ordinary everything looks from the outside. Share your story if it feels right. Like and follow if you want more stories about family, truth, and consequences. Because at some point, everyone faces the same question. Do you forgive, or do you protect what's left before it's too late?